Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Sloth Junk. Shall we press on?
Shall we press on? I have a little bit of a... This is kind of a short but sweet, rather lovely word. So I thought. And the word I'm going to talk about this time around is sloth.
Like F-L-U-F-F?
S-L-O-T-H.
Oh, sloth.
Yeah.
Good old Zoom audio quality helping me not sound like an idiot. Okay.
And Ryan, listen, if either of us ever gets worried about sounding like an idiot, this podcast is over.
Oh, down in flames. Yeah, no.
Absolutely. Volcano type destruction.
Yep. Yeah, it'll just be over.
So sloth. Now again, I mentioned
sloth.
last time about how yarp and narp are commonly used words in my particular house because we are quite silly, and I am not a person of great energy, shall we say. I am in fact a person who really loves sleeping, really loves lying down, really loves not moving much, which is a little bit hilarious because in my other job I am a Pilates teacher and movement is everything.
Yeah.
I like moving, but I also like not moving, and I think like that's okay. Both those things can exist within one life.
Yeah.
So the sloth is an animal that is of natural interest to me because I need a rest, like often.
Yeah.
I need a rest. Maybe it's because I often have 22 tabs open in my phone.
I mean, there's that.
Many, many more tabs open in my brain. But I'm tired, a lot. And I'm well aware of the absolute peril of discussing a situation like this with someone like you. Because I am childless and petless, and I live in a house with one other person who gives me quite a lot of my own space to do the things I want to do.
Right.
And I have a lot of silence in my life.
Oh.
And yeah, so like you're similar to most of my friends. Most of my friends have at least a couple of kids. They have chaotic lives. They're full of noise and stuff and chaos and. And
yeah,
I remember when my nephews and nieces were a bit younger, that my sister-in-law used to joke that I should give her my keys so she could just come and sit in my house sometimes where there were no children and it was quiet.
Yeah.
Because it's really tiring when your house is full of people. That's a thing. But nonetheless, I am tired a lot. In fact, I'm trying desperately to get my doctor to perhaps sort that situation out for me, but that's a whole other tale.
Yeah.
So the sloth is an animal with which I am naturally affiliated. I enjoy its work. It's cool to me that animals can like hang onto a tree branch and go to sleep. I consider that to be skills.
Yeah.
In our rather silly house, we almost always refer to them as sloths, as though it's spelled with a double F. Forgive me if I accidentally talk about sloths as I'm going through this because I'm so used to doing it. I do love when people accidentally say the things that they say at home out in the real world. I've done it a few times. But
it's always great.
Yeah. Like when you always say, like I genuinely have to think hard to get this right. I'm sure I've talked about this before. Stanima instead of stamina.
Right. Yeah.
You then find yourself genuinely confused as to which one is correct. So, yeah. The main thing that I started wondering about regarding the word sloth was that when I hear that word, I immediately think of the furry, cute creatures.
Right.
But of course, which came first? the slow-moving animal or the slow movingness? Is the animal called after the idea of slowness, or do we use the word sloth because the animals are slow? And so I took myself off to the OED to have a look at this situation, and I discovered something interesting there. I discovered, first of all, that the word is much older than I was assuming, and of course I'd forgotten that it is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Right, yeah.
Which seems very obvious, but isn't everything until somebody reminds you of it. So the OED defines it thus: physical or mental inactivity, disinclination to action, exertion or labour, sluggishness, idleness, indolence or laziness. Music to my ears.
Wonderful.
The first citation given in the OED is from circa 1175. In other words, people have been trying not to do all the things for a very, very, very
long time.
Which makes sense because history was hard work.
Yes.
So, of course, when I saw how very old this word was, and there are several, there are, in fact, 5 different categories of citation about that sense, I started to think, well, obviously the concept comes first and the animal comes later. We next get the idea of sloth as a personification. The first citation for that is given in 1362 in the inestimable Piers Plowman by William Langland, which I studied at university and cannot recommend highly enough. If you are intimidated by reading medieval texts, just get yourself a good translation. It's such a cool text. It's super cool for all sorts of reasons. And sloth in Piers Plowman, a text which is rich with personification and metaphor and allegory and all that stuff. Sloth is a person who is seen by the dreamer. And this is an idea that continues. We then get the sense of slowness or tardiness. And this one I enjoyed. A proper term by later writers taken to mean a company of bears, or erroneously boars. So around about 1452, people were writing about a sloth of bears, with various interesting and wonderful spellings. So for some reason, a company of bears was at one time referred to as a sloth of bears.
That's fantastic.
I know, I like that one a lot. And then at sense 4, we have the edentate arboreal mammal of a sluggish nature, inhabiting tropical parts of Central and South America. And this doesn't occur until 1613. And we have all sorts of compounds: sloth jaundice, sloth animal, cule, sloth bear, sloth monkey, etc., etc., etc. Etymologically speaking, this was where I started to make satisfied academic noises.
Nice.
Because this word is not in any way complicated in terms of its etymology, but none of these simple bits had occurred to me.
Right.
Because in fact, sloth is made up very simply of 2 parts. It is made up of the word slow and the abstract formative suffix th. And if you put those 2 together like Lego bricks, you get sloth.
Sloth.
Right?
That's neat.
And of course, this suffix gives us all sorts of words. And I got super squealy excited about all of this stuff. Because if you take the word deep and you add the th to it,
of course,
you get the word depth.
Depth, yeah.
If you take strong and add a th, you get strength. Truth. Sometimes in English it's reduced to simply a T rather than a TH, especially after an H, as in height, because height is a bit of a mouthful. Yeah. And I started to think about all the other TH words that could exist, many of which do exist, but some of which I am entirely making up. But it made me think of, again, because most of my kind of cultural knowledge is based upon Terry Pratchett books, but there is at one point a discussion about the term coolth. Coolth.
I like that.
As in the quality of being cool. A person's coolth can be measured by blah, blah, blah.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I had a little look at some more of these TH words, but I think the one that I like best is, now prepare yourself to go, oh, of course.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm so pleased by the etymology of this word. It's just making me really happy. Wealth. W-E-A-L-T-H.
Well.
What is the etymology of this word?
Wheel? Wait. What would W-E-A-L?
This is exactly what I wondered. So I had a look, and I discovered that back in the mists of time, before spelling had been invented and codified and written down by serious white men, the word wealth is made up of the word well and the suffix th.
Oh.
To be wealthy is to have wellness.
There's lots of wellness.
Which is, of course, much easier to do if you actually have the money to pay for it, or the resources to pay for that wellness. So, yeah, from the cute, long eyelashed, slow moving animals to the deadly sin, the concept of slowness and the personification thereof, to all sorts of excellent th suffixed words, including wealth.
It also kind of gives a pretty concrete highlighting to there's more to wellness than just money. Wealth is not just monetary wealth.
But at the same time,
but it's a lot easier with monetary wealth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. That when I was a yoga teacher, I would occasionally offer. I would go into workplaces and do corporate wellness classes, corporate yoga classes, and this began to be a thing that really bothered me, because those people did not need yoga.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a wonderful cartoon about this, just a sort of a 2-panel thing with, we're all so stressed and everybody's getting sick and this workplace is terrible. Let's do something about that. Oh, great. Are you going to pay us more to reduce our working hours? No, stupid. Let's have some yoga.
That's right. Yeah.
And you're like, yep. That's the whole shitty, terrible paradigm that we're working within here. I don't want to be part of that. Thanks very much. So
there was a tweet earlier that I saw just the other day, actually, very similar to that, and it was it was a screenshot of some sort of quiz or test for, like, I guess it was a test for like an HR qualification, like to be a human resources person or something, but it was which of the following things would have an impact on employee retention or something like that. And it was like the one of the options was a pay raise, and another one of the options was a ping pong table, and the person chose a pay raise because they have a working brain. And the correct answer was a ping pong table, and the helpful little pop-up window that showed up to explain why a pay raise was wrong was, actually, most people don't cite pay as an issue. Pay is not actually an issue as far as why people leave a job, and rather a ping pong table would equal more enjoyment. And the tweet was, someone at Big Ping Pong wrote this test. So it's interesting that it's exactly the same situation that you're bringing up.
I don't know who in the world isn't, like, do you know anyone who wouldn't like a pay raise?
No.
Anyone in the world? Like, I'm sure that billionaires of conscience, if that's not a contradiction in terms, occasionally think to themselves, I am making far too much money. This is ridiculous. But
yeah.
I mean, it's the very, very rare billionaire of conscience, again, if that's not a contradiction in terms, that would actually say, let's put a stop to this situation.
Yeah.
I'm making too much money. It's ridiculous. and I no longer wish to do that.
And here's what I'm going to do about that.
Yeah. I mean, I read a wonderful article this week about Chuck Feeney, the duty-free billionaire who gave away almost all of his wealth.
Yeah.
So there are indeed billionaires of conscience out there, or at least one. But, like, why are you leaving this job because it doesn't pay me enough? Like, I feel like that's probably a pretty common conversation to have, you know, in an exit interview or whatever else is going on.
I would have thought
I've never ever thought, do you know what would make this job much better? Ping pong.
I'm pretty sure that even... Well, I'm just going to say, I can't wrap my head around the idea of ping pong being relaxing. Like, I just can't see it.
Ryan, I am with you there.
I just, like, it just... That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, ping pong is not leisure.
My experience of ping pong is, if I really enjoyed bending down, this would be the game for me.
It's
like,
just not.
Can't get enough of picking things up.
That's right. From over there. Always from over there.
And usually under there. And fuck, how did I get there? Chasing
and picking up small objects. Boy, that's my idea of a good relaxing time.
Yeah.
So,
the bend of that situation puts me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as it should.
Is that what I can do it with? Bend? I mean, not technically, because it has to kind of be a quality. But yeah, I do love when words function like Lego bricks.
Yes, that is nice. Just click, click, click. Here we go. Sloth.
Yeah. Big
That's very neat.
pong.
Cool.
I wonder when that term first was used. Big oil, big tobacco, big pharma, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's something I should
That'd be an
look up.
interesting one to look in.
Yeah.
Look that up sometime.
Again, talk about how, you know, language is culture and culture is language. That's a really... Yeah, that would be a cool one to look at.
Neat.
So yeah, sloth.
Very cool. I do enjoy words of nautical origin.
Oh, don't we all?
So
all the nice girls love a sailor.
That's right. Famously. My word is
something about a sailor. Well, you know what sailors are. You didn't know that was a song, did you?
I did not know that was a song.
You thought I was just being enthusiastic and jolly.
Although I will say this, there's a meme, and again, I saw this on Facebook as a screenshot of Twitter meme that goes around Facebook sometimes, as is the way of things. And it was someone pointing out that anyone who complains about musicals not being realistic because, quote, people in real life don't just break into song, end quote, they're just not hanging out with the right people. And I know several people who just routinely break out into song like that.
I mean, I know a lot of song lyrics, and if you accidentally happen to say something that reminds me of or refers to those song lyrics, I'm going to sing the rest of that song.
You're going to sing that song, yeah.
You know, yeah.
So it's never occurred to me that musicals are, like, unrealistic for that reason. That's just never been I was like, well, of course they are. What do you mean? Anyway. So
yes, all the nice girls love a sailor, all the nice girls love a tar. And I definitely want to hear about their words.
So my word is junk.
Ooh.
Now, so this one, so I have two thoughts in my head, and I knew of two uses for this word, and one was garbage.
Yes.
And another one was a particular kind of boat.
Yes, same.
So,
I mean, there's a third sense, but I'm sure you'll get to that.
Oh, we're getting there. Yeah. So it's this word has a nautical origin, but maybe not what you think. Oh. Those and also I won't bury the lead here. The two words are unrelated.
Oh, okay.
The word for the ship and the word for garbage, they're not connected at all.
That's very interesting.
So the word junk shows up in the OED in the early 1400s, so around 1410. And the earliest sort of use and sense as identified in the OED, is as, quote, an old or inferior cable or rope, sometimes specifically one used as a fender. Now that's 1410.
Okay.
In 1528, sense 2 arrives. And maybe you can help me out with this, because anyway. Sense 2 is, quote, a piece of old cable or rope used especially for making fenders. Now, to me, those two sentences are the same. And maybe this is why I don't work on the editorial team behind the OED, because I don't see those as different, but...
Tell me the first one again.
So the first one is an old or inferior cable or rope, sometimes specifically one used as a fender.
Okay.
And sense 2 is a piece of old cable or rope used especially for making fenders.
I think, the OED editorial team have a big job on their hands, and I'm sure they get tired sometimes too, and maybe make, dare I say, mistakes. So
maybe this is one of those things where two people were working on the same one and they just didn't compare notes before someone hit publish or something on the web. I don't know.
I'm sure that happens, surely.
So I don't know why those are different, but that collectively, that's the earliest use of junk.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Ryan, and say that the reason you don't know why those things are different is because they're not.
Okay, that's super to hear, because
that's my take on that.
That's where I was going with it as well. But anyway, that's the earliest form of junk. So junk was a piece,
old
and it
rope.
was singular. It was a singular noun. A junk was a piece of, or an old rope, basically repurposed to serve as a fender on a boat to stop it from smashing into stuff and breaking things.
Cool.
In 1660-ish, it became a mass noun. This is when it becomes a sort of singular plural mass noun thing, where junk was just old rope material, but the same thing, cut up into short lengths to serve as small stuff when needed. And then in 1726, starting around 1726, it starts showing up as a piece or lump of something. Just a general thing. It's not pejorative. It's just a smaller bit of what was once a larger thing.
Okay, right.
So we're taking it starts out as a good, solid, sturdy rope. It becomes frayed and old and no longer trustworthy to serve as a rope to hold, to bear loads and stuff. So it gets cut up and used for a just different purpose. And then the cutting up is the thing that sticks.
That's
so much
cool.
like the other, not so much the other use, but the fact that you've made it smaller.
Right. That's
what it is. And as part of that, in 1762, it becomes, it's a sort of a sailing term for the salted meat used on long voyages.
Right. Usually
with salt in front of it, so salt junk is like salted meat. But you still get, it would have been cut into smaller pieces and salted and preserved and stuff. And then 1836, it starts meaning older or discarded stuff that could be reused or recycled. And occasionally around this time, it starts also meaning something old that can just be thrown away. Right. But you do still have this, the sense of repurposing something is still hanging on by 1836.
I wish to tell you something about rope, specifically old rope, because it was a lovely example of the old Bader Meinhof that happened to me in the summer. Okay. When I was reading, I was on holiday and I was reading a book that I've had for a long time and I've been meaning to read for ages, the Anthony Horowitz Sherlock Holmes novel that was obviously sanctioned by the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle and all the rest of it. And I do love me some Sherlock Holmes, and I like Anthony Horowitz's writing. So this book's called The House of Silk, and I'd picked it up years ago at a second-hand shop or church sale, one of those sorts of places, and I'd never read this book. So I took it on holiday with me, and it referred to a phrase that I had seen somewhere else just a few days before reading the book, it referred to the practice of picking oakum. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So, curious soul that I am, I had a look. Well, first of all, I wanted to know what oakum was. And so I had a look and I discovered that the practice of picking oakum, basically, oakum is, this is Wikipedia, it's a preparation of tarred fibre used to seal gaps. Its main traditional applications were in shipbuilding for caulking or packing the joints of timbers in wooden vessels and the deck planking of iron and steel ships, and in plumbing for sealing joints in cast iron pipe, and in log cabins for chinking. So oakum is fibre that is tarred or in some way made waterproof, and it's stuffed into places that need to be waterproof.
Right.
The practice of picking oakum was assigned to prisoners in Victorian Britain because people thought that prison was a bit too nice. They decided that...
There's one thing I think of Victorian prisons is posh.
Yeah. So basically, there was a sort of a period wherein people thought that taking someone off the streets and giving them a place to live and hot meals and water and, you know, exercise and such life, it occurred to the people in charge that for a lot of people, this was actually quite a big step up. And this irked them greatly because, you know, punishment and all that. Yeah. So some terrible historical white dudes applied themselves to the problem of what can we do to make this worse? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they came up with was the practice of picking oakum. Oakum was recycled like junk. This is what made me think of this.
Right.
And it was often fibre from rope. So if you were a man and you were in prison, you were given the job of bashing the tarred rope or the tarred fibre with heavy mallets and hammers to soften it a little bit. And it was then given to the women and the children who would, with their fingers, separate it into individual fibres.
Jeez. Okay?
Now, the potential for recycling was there, but that wasn't what the task was actually for. The task was in fact designed to be deliberately hard and deliberately pointless.
Yeah.
Interestingly, while reading about this use for old rope, I discovered that treadmills were invented for the same reason. The original treadmills that were installed in Victorian prisons, they kind of looked more like, if you imagine like a stairmaster.
Yep.
And they were literally wheels of stairs, wheels of rungs on a ladder that the prisoners had to. And when you talk about prison treadmills, people assume that the prisoners were driving something. Treadmills were designed to be pointless. They were designed to be dispiriting and useless and a waste of time. And they were dramatically hard work. You know, you were given, I don't know, like 4 hours with 15 minutes off, something crazy like that. And it absolutely ruined people's health. Oscar Wilde was subjected to the treadmill when he was imprisoned, and people reckon he never ever got over the physical shock of having to exercise at that level. Mm-hmm. So picking oakum is a task designed to waste people's time so that their lives aren't too nice. It was also physically hard work, not just for the mallet holders, for the people who were picking out the tarred rope.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and fingers got blistered and blackened. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in the fact that junk had this sense of recycling things, because who recycles things more than people who are out on a ship with finite resources? You
have an extremely finite resource pool.
Yeah, sure.
To draw from.
So things get used until they can't be used anymore.
Yeah, until they literally just...
Sorry. Yeah. I just, I was so intrigued by the phrase picking oakum that whenever anyone says anything about rope, I'm in there.
And that's where we are. That's cool. Yeah, so so basically we're up to about 400, more than 400 years where it still maintains that repurposes, reuse sense. It's kind of lost the rope connection now by the 1800s. And it's actually not until the early 20th century that it loses the repurposing completely and just becomes garbage.
Okay.
And also used for stuff of lower or no quality. So junk talk, just idle chat that means nothing, or junk jewelry, or, that kind of thing. Things that were sort of less useful than others. It's early 20th century that junk becomes slang for drugs as well.
Right.
Like a junkie. In 1983 is when it shows up in writing as primarily U.S. slang for male genitalia.
Interesting.
So that took a while.
Yeah. Much later than I would have expected.
And junk mail, as in like a junk email folder, and unwanted, uninvited email communication, shows up in 1986.
Oh wow! Specifically in an electronic sense.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I presume that the concept of junk mail, as in physical mail, existed for a long time before that.
But it doesn't seem to have.
Oh right. Well, that's very interesting.
It seems. Now, I mean, I think it also, I was interested by how early this shows up as an email thing. Like, people have been getting spam emails since it looks emails like existed. Immediately after email became a thing.
And that's why we can't have nice things.
Yeah. And way before most people had email.
Yeah, sure.
10 plus years before email was even remotely common.
Who the fuck was out there scamming the 7 people who were using the internet in 1986?
Right. I have a list of all 12 email addresses. I'm going to use this.
That just seems ridiculously...
It does. It seems going out of your way. That's, who did that, though? It was the ancestors of the people whose job it was to come up with more human misery engines for prisoners in Victorian prisons. It's like, how do we make this thing miserable and useless and stupid? I know.
Wow.
I'm going to send all 15 of those guys ads for treadmills. So, yeah.
I mean, these days using the internet does often feel like somebody is deliberately trying to piss your time away.
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, now most of the time it's just me, but still, somebody's doing it. Etymologically, we are in, quote, of uncertain origin territory, which we do enjoy. So the OAD supposes that it could be the same word as the there's a noun to version of this, of junk, which is a rush or a reed.
Oh, okay.
Now, this sense is the first attestation of a rush or a reed being a junk is a little bit later on in print than the first one. So the first sense shows up in 1410. I think this one is like 20 years later or something like that, 1430, 1420. But again, we're at that time when it is in the early 1400s, it is entirely conceivable that a word could be around for 50, 100 years without being written down. If it's, just because, again, not many things were being written down at the time. So it figures it could be the same word as that, and that the idea would be that the earliest sort of sailing ropes or possibly ropes that would be a little bit less durable and therefore would be repurposed sooner and more often would be ropes that were made from a junk, as in the rush or reed. And they take the fibers, the plant fibers, and do that. So that's the idea there. But just a theory, which we do like. Now, getting to the ship, the junk.
Yeah.
So the specific type of ship. Now, I just like a junk. I associate it with like an Southeast Asian, specifically setting, like the Chinese Navy back in the day, that type of thing. So I assumed that we call those junk because people are terrible and it was of racist origin. I don't think that's unfair.
I haven't ever really considered it, but I probably would have assumed much the same thing.
Yeah. Thankfully, for once, it's not. It is a borrowing.
Hooray for the times when language isn't hugely terrible and racist. Woo!
Yeah, it's always nice to have
They happen so
these.
infrequently, we should celebrate them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a borrowing of Javanese, zhong, meaning a large ship, or especially of Chinese origin. And then so that entered into Spanish and Portuguese, because they were primarily the earliest sort of really widespread colonial powers out that way.
Right.
And it spread from Spanish to Portuguese to English. And then we get a junk meaning that type of ship. But yeah, they just borrowed a local word for it, and there it is. So not related to junk garbage, not related to any racist colonial nonsense, except for just how it got to English. And so that's neat.
Cool. Yeah, that is neat.
Junk.
Junk.
It's also a fun word to say.
I was just going to wait to say, there's something very satisfying about it. I think, now, I have not conducted hugely detailed research into the situation, but I'm always interested about how, like, often terms for female genitalia are used pejoratively. And terms for male genitalia can also be used pejoratively.
Yeah.
But
less reliably.
Junk is the only kind of self-referential, almost pejorative way to describe.
A self-deprecating slang.
Yeah, thank you, that's the term that I'm looking for. Come on, the words, get into the brain. Yeah, it's I don't know, I always find it a little bit hilarious when men talk about their junk, because you're like, well, I mean, it is kind of hilarious and
yeah,
a bit, I mean, not useless if you're trying to, get your rocks off or make babies, but also kind of hangs there looking a bit useless, if that makes sense. So yeah, I get it, but I don't know, I always find it really funny, because generally speaking, men like to talk about how awesome their genitals are, source of all power, look at me, woohoo.
It does tend to be how it works.
So yeah, I quite enjoy
like
junk as slang for male genitalia.
Yeah.
I think, am I right in saying that women don't use that term? It's never used for female genitalia?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever heard it. Yeah,
that's because it could be. It's not specifically, you know what I'm getting at. Like it doesn't refer
it's not
to
inherently
shape or function or anything that is inherently male. Yeah.
But nevertheless, it does seem to be the only time. It's the only thing I can think of. I can't think of ever hearing it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway,
I love the notion too. I was thinking this when you were talking about the idea of junk as stuff that you can use again. Like, I sometimes think that we kind of think that recycling is a modern phenomena.
Oh,
which,
yeah, no.
Like, couldn't be further from the truth, because, like, when you have to sail 1,000 miles to get a commodity, you use it well. And if you can use it for something else once you've used it for the first thing, then god damn it, you're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. I sort of, my modern brain thought, oh, recycling is old. Yeah, of course it is, Amy. Like, that's how people lived. Things were used until they were used up. And if they couldn't be used up that way anymore, then they would be used up another way, because things cost money and resources, and those things were valued. Yeah,
it hadn't occurred to me till just now that this is sort of one of those examples of how tracing the etymology can give kind of some hints as to what's going on in the world at the time. For the language users, because it is interesting how it takes until the 20th century before things that are old and kind of worn out become garbage rather than become something that could be used for something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's only when, like, industrialization and mass production
ruined
have
everything.
Sort of ruined everything and taken over and become the norm in English-speaking lands, that you even get a sense of this thing is old and therefore it's junk, and therefore that it's garbage, and therefore it is to be discarded.
Yeah. I must have told you about my experiences with the safety razor. No, have we never talked about this before. So
don't know.
I went to a Pachakacha night at the local theatre. If you don't know what, I thought it was pronounced Pechakucha because I assume that things are pronounced the way they are in English. Sorry, colonial me. But it's pronounced Pachakacha, and it's cool, and I heartily endorse checking it out. Basically, it's a presentation format where you have a certain number of PowerPoint slides and a certain amount of time to talk about each slide. So it was introduced by I think an architecture firm, where they didn't want people to go on for ages. So they were like, right, you have 1 minute for 10 slides, or whatever. You can split it up into various different things. So
it sounds like a Pokemon.
It does, doesn't it? But Pachakacha is a global phenomenon where basically, when you go to a Pachakacha night, there's a host of speakers who all follow this format, but you can use the format to talk about literally anything. So the ones that have been hosted in Dundee that I've been to have featured local artists, creators, business owners, experts, people who do cool stuff. It's very diverse, and you get to hear about a lot of really kind of interesting things that are quite disparate, but also short and easy to digest. So one of the speakers was a young student who was talking about ways in which she was trying to make her life a bit more environmentally friendly. And she talked about using a safety razor. And at that point, I had never heard of a safety razor. What I discovered was it's an oldie-timey razor. Probably my, grandfather would have used a razor like this. Conceivably, even my father. It's made out of stainless steel. It has two parts, a handle and a head. You unscrew the head from the handle, and you put a razor blade, the oldie-timey kind that you see in films. You put a razor blade into the safety razor, and then you use it. And it was, of course, replaced by the disposable safety razor, the Gillette kind of, plastic handled thing that became very common. And which has since been replaced by the let's have 12 blades because that makes things better situation that's, it's just entirely madness.
Gillette Mach 38. Shave your face by moving your razor 1 millimeter across it.
It's the Mitchell and Webb sketch about marketing toothbrushes and toothpaste?
No.
You seen that one? I'll find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And they're basically talking about how does one market a product that just does a thing and everybody knows what it does.
That's a good question.
Yeah. But, so I sort of thought, well, a razor, if you're a woman and you shave your legs, then buying razors is expensive. It is hugely plastic waste rich. And you use them a few times and then they have to be thrown away. So I was like, I wonder what safety razors are like. They're probably super hard to use and you cut yourself all the time. And they're probably not as good as the kind that you get now, and that's why they've been replaced. Okay, fine.
Right.
And then I did a bit of research, and I discovered lots of people saying safety razors are great. You have to kind of learn how to use them. You have to invest a bit of time in just getting used to the differences between a safety razor and a normal plastic razor, but, would highly recommend. So I bought one. And what I discovered was, true, you could potentially cut yourself very badly with a safety razor.
Right.
The safety part refers to as in not as unsafe as a cutthroat razor. Basically, that's what they're saying.
Right.
But if you're careful, you don't cut yourself very often. And that is in part because the blades that you use are incredibly sharp. So basically, a safety razor is a tool that does a job incredibly well, much better than any fancy-assed 5 blades, costs £7 for a cartridge razor I've ever used.
Right.
Cleaner shave, better shave, kinder to your skin, much cheaper in terms of the outlay of resources. So I'm like, wait a minute, how did this thing get replaced?
Yeah.
It's better. It's objectively better at doing the job that these other products now do. And honestly, I have no idea how this technology got replaced. Because, razor blades cost pennies, literally pennies. You can buy a big old box of razor blades for hardly any money. They're sharp, they're useful. You get a really clean shave, much closer and much cleaner than anything else I've ever used, and you're not screwing up the planet by throwing away 1 million tons of plastic. So,
seems like a win-win.
Yeah. So somebody came in and said, we've invented the disposable razor. It's not as good as the thing you used to have, but you can't throw it away. Like, I'm genuinely baffled about how that situation came about. Were people just crazy? And I mean, maybe razor blades weren't as good, or maybe people, they were expensive, or I don't understand. I don't understand why disposable razors became the thing that they have since become. Like, old stuff isn't always better stuff. I'm glad that medical science has progressed. I'm glad that computer technology has progressed, and I don't need a room to keep my computer in. But sometimes just do the thing that the old-timey people did. It's better. Yeah.
Sometimes they were onto something.
Yeah, indeed.
It reminds me that the worst of both worlds. So let's move to this thing reminded me of, and I don't know which comic it was. I feel like it might have been Eddie Izzard, but I'm not sure. But it was a stand-up comic who said something along the lines of, my family is both English and French, so I'm crap in bed, but at least I've got bad breath. It's like, it's inconvenient. It's worse for you. It's worse for the world, and you'll end up spending way more on it. We're all going to do this now.
Yeah.
That's weird.
But then, I mean, maybe people said the same thing about oil when it first rocked up.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Modern life is baffling.
It's true. At least we have sloth junk around.
Sloth junk. That's great.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.